What's up guys, James here from Boot Wizard Boot Reviews, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Phantom GT Pro. So this is the first takedown model in the brand new GT line. We've of course got the Elite, which I've already reviewed. That comes in at 250 euros. This bad boy here, 130 euros, and it's dropping with a brand new flyknit upper. So this is the first time we've ever seen a flyknit upper, a full flyknit upper on a takedown boot from Nike. So does that make it good value for money? Does that mean you should go out and cop this maybe instead of the Elite because this is so much cheaper? Well, that's what we're here to find out today. So remember to like the video, get subscribed to the channel, and I'll get into it and tell you everything you need to know about the Phantom GT Pro. We are going to start with the upper, and there is a lot of similarities here to what you're going to get from the Elite level model, but all of those similarities have little tweaks or differences which kind of show off the price difference. Starting with that 100% flyknit upper. As I say, first time we've ever got it on a takedown model from Nike. We've got circle knit on the Vapor 13 Pro and the Superfly Pro, but not flyknit. So that is a really nice little addition. Now, the flyknit isn't quite as premium feeling as what you're gonna get from the Elite level model, and that's very noticeable through this tongue area here where it's not quite as stretchy and it doesn't feel quite as thin, but it's still a really high quality upper material. Next up, of course, the GT in the Phantom GT name stands for generative texture, which is all of these little kind of lines that run all the way around the upper of the boot and provide you with grip and texture on the ball. You do get that on the Phantom GT Pro, however, they're actually not in the same place. They're ever so slightly different, which, considering Nike have made such a big deal about the technology and how it's important to have the generative texture in these places, to move that slightly just for the sake of it seems, on the Pro seems a bit of an odd decision. And then the actual texture itself, the shape of those lines is not quite the same. They're a little bit bigger, but the overall feel on the ball is very different. And that's because the GT Elite has this kind of grippy, slightly tactile feel, especially through maybe this Nike swoosh area here, whereas you don't get that on the Pro version. It's just a base material. So this top layer is a Nike skin top coating with this texture built in, and it's just bumpy. It doesn't have that grippy tactile feeling that's noticeable in hand. It's even more noticeable on the ball when you compare the two together. So yes, you get a bit of texture, you get a bit of grip. It's not a slick surface, so you're not going to have any problems, but you're certainly not gaining a big advantage here, which you do get a bit of advantage on the Elite, and I like the texture. Running onto the inside of the boot, you get a super slick heel liner. So we'll get onto fit and comfort later, but the heel liner here I'm not particularly impressed with, and I would strongly suggest that if you can, maybe rock some grip socks with these. But if you're buying a takedown boot, you don't have to pay money for grip socks. So I'm a bit disappointed with that, and overall the heel fit seems a bit wider than what you're going to get on the Elite level model. Despite both boots having a very, very similar shape, it in fact could be exactly the same. There is a bit of padding in the heel, so it is fairly comfortable, but like I say, heel slippage for me is a problem. Definitely want grip socks there. And then if you run down the boot into the internals, you get this nylon liner, so it feels kind of what you might make a cheap tracksuit from the 90s or some kind of cheap sleeping bag out of. Nike have used this before on several boots, and it's a liner that I've never really enjoyed. It's designed to not stretch and provide a bit of structure to the boot, which honestly this boot desperately needs. I mentioned in my Elite level review that the lockdown was good enough. The responsiveness isn't great. It is a fairly non-structured boot. It's designed to give you a free feeling. There's not much structure through the midfoot of the boot. If you do kind of put a lot of pressure on it, you don't get the most responsive feeling, even though it's got quite a nice responsive outsole. Here, not the case. This is, well, just not very responsive, to a point where I find it a bit disappointing. The lockdown is fine, the one-piece upper helps, but yeah, not amazing in that regard at all. This different liner, which certainly has a bit of padding, along with these raised elements that are around the boot without adding extra texture, do mean that the touch and feel from this isn't as barefoot or as free or as natural, all the words I use to describe the Elite. It's just not. Now, you wouldn't expect to get the same quality and the same touch and feel that you're going to get from a 250 euro boot on a 130 euro boot, but that, on the whole, it's a step further down, in my opinion, than Nike have taken with, for example, the Vapor 13 Pro or the Superfly Pro, which I think is a fantastic boot. So even by using flyknit instead of circle knit, I would argue that the upper and the sensation you get from the Vapor Pro models is better than this. But overall, on the upper, it is a high quality upper. It does some great things. You just need to be aware that the lockdown and responsiveness is not the greatest, but this is going to suit a certain type of player, a certain type of foot type, and a certain type of feel. Flipping around onto the Soleplate and again making a comparison to the Vapor 13 Pro, which has an almost identical Soleplate to what you're going to find on the Elite level model. It's not quite the case here, even though it's very good. You can see you still get this split sole design with the missing piece on the medial side, exactly the same, and the stud pattern looks pretty much the same, and the stud shape is ever so slightly different. So you get a lot of the same elements, but it's executed that little bit differently. Starting with the stud shape, you can see that your chevron blades are basically all in the same places and do the same job, but your conical studs, which are these low profile split conical studs in the Elite level version, have been replaced by a more conical, slightly wider, only slightly offset stud in the Pro level version. Now, that's not a problem per se, it still does a good job, but it's definitely, you do feel a little bit less in terms of the aggressiveness and the responsiveness from the Soleplate, something that this boot desperately needed to compensate for that lack of responsiveness in the upper. The outsole material is also different on this boot compared to the Elite. It's not quite as premium. Now, you still get a good amount of snapback and it's still got a good amount of rotational movement in the forefoot, but you can just feel it that it's not quite as premium, which again, you're paying 120 euros less for the boot. It's to be expected, but again, when you compare it to its counterparts in something like the Vapor 13 Pro, it's just not quite at that level. But overall, the Soleplate is still one of the best things about this boot. It's one of the best things about the Elite level boot. So I'm absolutely not criticizing it for the price point, for what you get. I think this is an excellent purchase. I don't really have any complaints. Also with the Soleplate, I have praised the Elite level version and the way that this missing piece on the medial side here kind of causes the instep to wrap around my foot up the inside of the boot, and I found that I've got a really nice molded fit because of that. And you can see here, you can actually see the outline of that inner sole board. When you pick up the Pro level version, you don't get that. You can't really see that inner line where it is, and that's because there's a lot of excess material, or at least a lot of material on the instep of the boot. And you can just, on feet, when it's in hand, you can kind of pinch that. You can see the insole board ends here, and there's all of this extra material just here, which again, we'll get into this in more detail in the fit and comfort section, but it makes for a much wider boot than the Elite level version, and I don't think in a particularly good way. We end up with a lot of extra material. You're going to need a fairly wide foot in order to fill out this boot properly. Looks wise, these two look fairly similar. There's not that much between them. The pro level version doesn't look quite as sleek, I suppose, as the elite level. That larger toe swoosh on the elite and the slight difference in the heel swoosh as well does make the elite version look that little bit better. But again, considering the price difference of 120 euros, I'd say this still looks pretty damn premium. Something to note, if it's something you care about, is that the elite level model has an ACC logo just here, and the pro level model has Nike skin. So Nike skin for that top layer, which means that because there's no ACC logo, we have to assume there is no ACC on the pro level boot. Again, you do get it on the pro level Vapor. Both the pro level Mercurials have ACC. This, by all accounts, does not. But looks wise, I don't think there's a huge difference or issue here. If you're going to pick up the pro and you're on the pitch, I'm sure people could be forgiven for mistaking the pro for the elite level version. Nice work. Now, of course, I'm comparing this a lot to the elite level version, but we have to take into account the fact that it's a lot cheaper. So generally you expect the elite to be better. Fair enough. But in weight terms, in hand, this feels like it might be a lighter boot than what we get from the elite. So let's get them on the scales. So if we drop the elite onto the scales first, they're both the same size, a UK 7.5, and the elite comes in at 206 grams. Perfectly acceptable weight, very much in the light boot category. There's nothing to complain about here at all. Let's get the pro on the scales. If we drop the pro onto the scales, that comes in at 203 grams. So Nike have actually managed to make their pro level boot lighter than their elite level boot. Now, that's not a problem, of course, and the difference is fairly minimal. You're unlikely to notice it on feet, maybe even in hand, unless you're really looking for it. But Nike normally wouldn't do that. Like, even if they can make the pro version lighter, they normally wouldn't go down that route, and because it is a cheaper boot, they'd try and make it that little bit heavier. But if lightness is your game, then these are actually a lighter boot than the elite, so no complaints at all. Okay, let's get into the fit and comfort. Now, the elite is a fairly wide boot, one that I do recommend for people with wide feet. However, in order to get the best possible fit, because of that width and because of a bit of extra length, I do recommend that most people go down half a size, unless you have a particularly wide foot or you are really close to the end of the boot in your current boots, you can probably stay true to size. However, I think exactly the same about the Pro. The Pro level boot is potentially built off the same last. The shape is very, very similar and it still runs the same amount long. So my advice on the Elite absolutely applies to the Pro in terms of length. However, in width terms, the Pro is even wider than the Elite. So if you have a really wide foot and you want to pick up the latest Nike boot and you're on a budget, this is like the perfect thing. This is the dream for you. I get so many messages daily, people being like, I've got wide feet, what boot should I get? I've got wide feet and I'm on a budget, because not everybody can afford to spend 250 euros on a pair of boots, or maybe they don't want to. It's a lot of money. So a lot of people go out and buy takedowns. These aren't the most popular boots from Nike, the elite level boots. A lot of people buy takedowns and a lot of people want a comfortable boot with a wider fit. This might just do the job. So despite the fact that I will come out and say, I think the Vapor 13 Pro is a better boot than this. I think you get better value for money despite only getting the circle knit upper, and I think it's better performing. If you are in that market for a cheaper boot with a wider fit that's going to maybe be more comfortable, then this could absolutely be the way to go. Now, I have a fairly average width foot, nothing too crazy on the narrow or wide side, and for me, this is wide to a point where I don't really want to wear it, even with going down half a size. There's just too much material around this instep area. I can pinch it while it's on feet, and I find that it bunches up when I bend my foot. Now, it's not hugely detrimental to performance in the bend, but it is a little bit annoying. I think with the Pro, it's particularly evident that Nike are trying to appeal to a consumer base that is largely shouting for boots, somebody who's looking for something that's a bit cheaper, that's a bit wider, that's more comfortable, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, for me, to get the best possible performance and fit, these are simply too wide. And when you combine that with a liner that I think is on the cheaper side and an upper that I think is basically not even close to as good as the Elite and gives you a bit of a more padded touch, there's not really any benefit to the texture, I think that this is a good boot and one you should definitely consider, and it's probably still one of the best takedown boots on the market. That's how good Nike's takedown boots are at the moment. I think that this is still better than any takedown model you can pick up from Adidas. But if I'm putting this up against Nike's other takedown models, it's probably the worst one. And where with the Vapor, I'm happy to maybe wear the Pro. I think it's a really well-performing boot. In this, I would definitely be reaching for the Elite if you've got the money. If you want to pick up either the Pro or the Elite level version, there will be a link down in the top comment and also in my description. Strongly recommend checking that out. So to conclude, if you're on a budget and you've got a wide foot, which based on my comments and message box is a lot of people, then you should definitely be checking out the GT Pro. I think it's going to really suit a lot of people and deliver what a lot of people want. For me personally, for performance and what I'm looking for from a football boot, even at a €130 price point, I think there are better options out there. Is this better than the boots that it replaces? I think it's better than the Vision for sure. I didn't really like the Vision Pro. I didn't think you got great value for money out of that because they had the quad fit and all the tech taken out. With this, I think it's not as good as the Venom Pro it replaces. So you may want to look up the Venom Pro as an option, although that's not as wide and it's very difficult to get on. That has a Kangalite upper, and yeah, okay, I'm a bit biased. I really like Kangalite. So Venom Pro may be better. Vision Pro, definitely not. You should go for this instead. And there's definitely value for money here, despite a few quirks and problems. And €130, I'm not complaining too much, apart from maybe this material on the instep. Let me know what you think about the GT Pro. Is this something that you're likely to pick up? Drop that down in the comments, and also let me know if you want to see reviews of any of the other boots in the GT line. I happen to have a pair of Academies sitting just here. If you want to see that on the channel, let me know. But with that said, that is everything from Boot Wizard today. Any questions about the boot, also let me know. You can do that here or over on Instagram at Boot Wizard Boot Reviews. Hope you've had a good day. I hope you've enjoyed the review. And I'll see you soon. Get subscribed. Did I say that? I don't know. Get subscribed. There's a giveaway coming too. Giveaway. One of these. Giveaway. Shh.